I'm Rachel Monroe, 30 years old, and up until last fall, I thought I had finally found peace, steady career, stable relationship, and just months away from my own wedding. I never expected it would all unravel at my sister's engagement party. Not because of a fight or a misunderstanding, but because my mother hurled a cup of hot coffee straight at my face. The burns were real, but what hurt more was everything that came after. That day exposed truths I'd buried for years, truths that would tear through every corner of our family. And before the weekend was over, the quiet life I'd built for myself would never be the same. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to keep the peace just to survive family gatherings. I grew up on the north side of Chicago, in a neighborhood that sat somewhere between modest and run down. Our house was a split level with faded blue siding and a sagging back fence. My dad Rick always said he'd fix things up next summer, but those summers came and went. He meant well, always did, but he wasn't much for follow-through, especially when it came to dealing with my mom. My mother Diane ran the house like a private country club, rules, routines, expectations. Her nails were always perfect, her hair never out of place. She'd grown up poor daughter of a janitor and a seamstress, and had decided early on that appearances were everything. My dad's accounting job gave us enough to stay comfortable, but never enough to satisfy Diane's craving for something more. Then there was my younger sister, Melanie, 3 years younger and born with that wide-eyed charm people melt for. Melanie could break a vase and still get dessert. I could bring home straight A's and get a lecture about showing off. From as early as I can remember, I was expected to work hard, stay out of trouble, and not ask for too much. Melanie, though, she floated. One teacher's call and Mom would drop everything to defend her. Me, I learned to figure things out on my own. By the time I hit high school, I stopped trying to earn approval. Instead, I started planning my escape. Mom pushed for community college, said it was practical. I applied to every top university I could find and prayed for scholarships. When the acceptance letter from Northwestern came, I hid it for 2 days before I showed anyone. I still remember how she waved it in the air like a threat. "We've been saving for Melanie," she said. "Where do you expect this money to come from?" I told her I'd handle it myself, and I did. Between grants, loans, and waiting tables 6 nights a week, I made it through. Those years were brutal, barely enough sleep, barely enough money. But I got my degree in finance, and more importantly, I learned to depend on myself. The one person who truly stood by me through all of it was my grandmother Louise. She was a bookkeeper back in the day, sharp as ever, even in her 80s. We used to talk every Sunday. "You've got my backbone," she'd say. "Don't let anyone bend it out of shape." When she passed during my senior year, I found out she'd left me a small inheritance, $75,000, with a note that simply said, "For your future. Invest in something that matters." I never told anyone about that money. After college, I landed a junior role at a boutique investment firm in the city. While Melanie dropped out of her second semester and bounced from job to job, I worked my way up. Within 6 years, I was a senior advisor handling high-value portfolios. I had a condo near the lake, nothing flashy. My car was clean, reliable. I didn't post my titles online, didn't talk numbers at dinner. It wasn't shame, it was habit. In my family, showing success only made you a target. That's when I met Daniel. He wasn't flashy either. Built a cybersecurity company from the ground up, sold it young, and had already started something new by the time we met at a charity gala. Our values matched work hard, stay grounded, give back when you can. 2 years later, he proposed during a quiet hike in Acadia National Park. We set the date for the following summer, small ceremony, coastal lighthouse, 50 people max. Nothing extravagant, just the life we were building together. Of course, when I told my family, the first thing out of my mom's mouth was, "Well, it's about time someone married you." Melanie was more interested in planning the bachelorette weekend she assumed she'd host. And within a month, my mother started hinting that Melanie and her new boyfriend, an out-of-work actor with a trust fund, were also talking marriage. I kept my answers short. I had a house to buy, a wedding to plan, and a career to focus on. I wasn't in the mood for family politics. But then Melanie got engaged and Diane pulled out all the stops, a backyard transformed into a magazine spread guest list, a mile-long flowers by the truckload. It was clear this wasn't just a party, it was a production. And somewhere beneath the surface, I could already feel it. Something was coming. Something big. I packed my overnight bag and told Daniel I'd be back in 2 days. He kissed me on the forehead and said, "Call if you need me." I told him I'd be fine. I had no idea how wrong I was. The morning of Melanie's engagement party started early. I woke to the sound of chairs scraping across the patio and my mother's voice echoing from the backyard. Caterers and florists moved around like stagehands before a show. My dad stayed out of the way reading the paper with a mug of black coffee. Melanie was upstairs getting her makeup done, laughing with one of her friends from college. I kept busy helping where I could, setting the gift table, straightening centerpieces, keeping to the edges. Every so often, my mother would pop into view to bark an instruction or glance at the dessert table, making sure everything was just right. The backyard had been transformed, white roses hanging lanterns, table linens pressed to perfection. You'd think it was a wedding, not an engagement party. Daniel texted around noon. Traffic was worse than expected. He said he might not make it before the party ended. I told him it was fine not to rush. Bradley showed up an hour later, stepping out of a town car with sunglasses and a sharp blue suit. He smiled too wide when he greeted me and held on a little too long during the hug. "So you're the famous older sister," he said, eyes flicking to my earrings. "Melanie talks about you all the time." His tone was light, friendly enough, but something about the way he looked at me made me want to leave the conversation as quickly as possible. I excused myself to help in the kitchen, where Mom was rearranging appetizers and giving the caterers directions that didn't need giving. She handed me a glass of wine, then lowered her voice. "Bradley's parents are old money," she said. "They've had some financial hiccups lately, but it's nothing serious." She kept her tone casual, but I knew that tone. It meant there was a plan forming. "Bradley's trust fund is tied up," she added, like that explained something important. "But they're still moving forward with wedding deposits. Melanie's heart is set on Lakeside Gardens." I nodded, sipped the wine. I didn't ask how they planned to pay for it. Guests started arriving around 2. Friends, extended relatives, a few of Bradley's friends, who all seemed to dress like they were headed to a magazine shoot. They drank fast, talked loud, and joked about money more than I was comfortable with. One of them leaned toward me near the bar and said, "Your sister's lucky." Bradley was getting desperate. "Maxed out 2 cards last month." I didn't respond. I just walked away. Bradley's parents showed up shortly after, polite but distant. His mother shook my hand and gave me a tight smile. "We've heard a lot about you," she said. "Melanie says you're very accomplished." She didn't say it like a compliment. The quartet played softly from under the tent, and Melanie made her entrance around 3. She wore a blush dress that shimmered in the light and heels that sunk slightly into the grass with every step. Bradley joined her at the center of the yard arm around her waist. "Thank you all for being here," Melanie said, her voice carrying easily over the crowd. "Bradley and I have some exciting news about our wedding plans." She went on to describe a 7-tier cake from a celebrity baker in New York, a custom dress being flown in from Paris, a 3-week honeymoon in the Maldives, every detail more extravagant than the last. "And we're so grateful," she said, looking directly at me, "to have family who believes in investing in our future." People clapped. Glasses clinked. My mother raised her champagne with a glowing smile. To Melanie and Bradley, she said, "May your dreams come true with a little help from those who love you most." I smiled tightly and looked for a quiet place to stand. Maybe I could say I had a work emergency. Maybe I could leave before anything else got said. But then my mother appeared at my side. "Rebecca, could we speak privately for a moment?" she said, already turning toward the house. I followed her inside through the living room into the den. She closed the door and stood near the window, watching the party outside. "Isn't it lovely?" she asked. "It's beautiful," I said. She turned, her expression softening in a way that never sat right with me. "The Nortons are going through a tough patch," she said. "Bradley's trust fund isn't what it used to be, but Melanie's heart is set on this wedding." She paused. "We thought maybe you could help." I didn't respond. "You've done well," she went on. "You and Daniel are practical. Your lighthouse thing can wait. But Melanie, she deserves a proper start." I waited a beat, then asked, "How much 50,000, she said. "To start." I blinked. "No." She stared at me, surprised. "No," she repeated. "I'm not giving Melanie $50,000 for a wedding she can't afford." I said, "Daniel and I are paying for our own wedding. We're buying a house. I'm not postponing my life to fund hers." Her face changed instantly. "After everything we've done for you," she snapped. "All the sacrifices," I cut her off. "What sacrifices?" Her mouth opened, then closed. "I paid my way through college," I said. "I worked 3 jobs. I've never asked you for a dime. I've helped when I could quietly. But I'm not doing this." Her voice rose. "You've always been selfish, always counting your money, thinking only of yourself." I moved toward the door. "I'm done talking about this," I said. I stepped out into the hallway. A few people looked up from the kitchen, clearly hearing the end of our argument. But my mother wasn't finished. She followed me through the house and out onto the patio. Everyone she called out, raising her voice over the string music and conversation. "Rebecca has something to share." The crowd quieted. "Mom, don't," I said low and firm. "She's refused to help with her sister's wedding," my mother announced. "She has the money. She just doesn't want to." People turned, glasses lowered. "Melanie," she continued, "your sister is letting your dreams fall apart." "For what?" "So she can have her little ceremony in Maine." I stood frozen. My dress felt tight across my chest. Melanie came forward, eyes wide. "Rebecca, is that true?" "We can talk later," I said, my voice shaking. "There's nothing to talk about," my mother said sharply. She made her choice. And then it happened. My mother reached for the refreshment table, grabbed a full cup of coffee, and flung it at me. The liquid hit my face and chest. I gasped, staggering back. My skin burned instantly. I heard someone yell. A chair scraped loudly. My hands flew to my face. "Oh my God," Melanie whispered. Guests rushed forward. Someone handed me a napkin. Someone else grabbed ice. I sat down, my dress soaked, my skin stinging, unsure if I should cry or scream. Then the front door opened. Daniel walked in, paused, and took in the scene. His eyes moved from me to the crowd to my mother still standing near the table. Hands clenched. "What happened?" he asked, already moving toward me. My mother stepped forward, trying to smile. "Just a disagreement," she said. "Things got a little heated." "You threw coffee in her face," Daniel said flatly. "It wasn't like that," she said quickly. "It was an accident." Daniel crouched beside me. "We need to get you to a doctor." "She's fine," my mother said. "It wasn't even that hot." Daniel stood. "No," he said, his voice low and steady. "She's not fine." He looked around the yard, his eyes sharp and clear. "And I think it's time some things were said." Daniel stood in front of my mother, eyes level, voice steady. "I think everyone here needs to know what's really been going on." No one moved. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. Guests stood in tight little clusters, watching from the patio in the yard. My mother didn't speak, just crossed her arms, her face still flushed from the chaos. Daniel turned slightly, his voice still calm. "For the last 3 years, Rebecca has been paying your mortgage." There was a ripple in the crowd. My father, standing behind my mother, blinked hard. "Is that true?" he asked, looking at me. I nodded once, slow. "I didn't want you to worry about the house," I said. My mother let out a short breath as if trying to laugh it off. "That's ridiculous. We would have known." "No, you wouldn't," Daniel said. "She did it through a trust, quietly, because she didn't want credit. She just didn't want to see you lose your home." Someone gasped. I felt the sting on my cheek again, still burning, but distant now, like it belonged to another moment. Daniel wasn't finished. She also paid off Melanie's student loans. $30,000. She told the loan company to mark it as a forgiveness grant, so Melanie wouldn't know it was her. Melanie stepped forward. "That was you," she asked. "You told me it was some scholarship. Why wouldn't you tell me?" I looked at her. "Would it have changed anything?" Melanie stared at me, mouth slightly open, like she didn't know what to say. Bradley was behind her, hands in his pockets, watching everything without expression. Daniel turned back to my mother. "You've spent years making Rebecca feel like she owed you something, like she was the problem, all while she's been helping you quietly without asking for anything in return." "She's always been careful with money," my mother said quickly. "Always frugal, always private." "She's been successful," Daniel corrected. "That small inheritance from her grandmother, she invested it, grew it. She's now a founding partner at one of the top venture firms in Chicago. Her name carries weight in boardrooms. She mentors young women in finance. She funds education programs for girls in underserved communities. But she never said any of that here because she didn't want you to treat her like a wallet." No one spoke. Melanie looked at me again, this time with something softer in her eyes. My dad stood off to the side, hands loose at his sides. My mother finally said, "If we'd known, we never would have asked for help." "That's not true," I said. "You asked because you've always seen me as the backup, the one who can fix things, not as your daughter." For a long moment, there was only the sound of wind moving through the trees. My father cleared his throat. "Is this true? Diane, have we really treated her that way?" She shook her head slow, as if she didn't understand the question. "Do we only call when we need something?" he asked. "Why did you throw coffee at her? Why did it come to that?" She looked around, but there was no support in the faces watching her. Daniel touched my arm. "We need to go. You need to be looked at." Melanie stepped forward, blocking our path. "Rebecca, wait. I didn't know. About the mortgage, the loans, any of it. I didn't know." "You didn't ask," Daniel said. Bradley came to Melanie's side, hand resting lightly on her waist. His eyes stayed on me. "We should talk sometime," he said. "There might be investment opportunities we could explore, family working together." I said nothing. Melanie glanced at him, then at me, something uncertain passing over her face. Daniel's voice was firm now. "We're leaving." He guided me through the crowd, through the side gate, and out to his car. As soon as the door shut, the tears came. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, steady release. He didn't say anything, just drove one hand on the wheel, the other holding mine. At the ER, the doctor confirmed first-degree burns. They treated my face and neck, gave me ointment and instructions, said it would heal clean if I was careful. While I waited, my phone buzzed non-stop. Messages stacked up one after another. Melanie, my dad, my Aunt Patricia, even Bradley. I silenced the phone and handed it to Daniel. "Not now." He nodded and tucked it in his coat pocket. At the hotel that night, he ran a cool bath and ordered room service. I sat in a robe on the edge of the bed, still holding the ice pack they'd given me. I didn't mean to expose everything he said finally. "I know you wanted it kept private. I think it needed to come out," I said. We ate quietly, watched the fire flicker in the small gas fireplace at the end of the suite. The pain had dulled, but my chest still ached in a way I couldn't name. The next day I called my therapist, Jillian. She made space for me that afternoon. I told her everything, how it started, what was said, how it ended. She listened. Then she said, "That wasn't just a fight, Rachel. That was assault." I stared at my hands in my lap. "She's never hit me before." "Maybe not physically," Jillian said, "but there's been harm for years. This was just the part no one could ignore." She helped me make a plan. We talked about boundaries, about next steps, about not needing to explain myself to anyone who'd already decided how they wanted the story to go. "You're allowed to pause," she said. "You're allowed to heal." That night I turned my phone back on. More texts, more missed calls, a voicemail from my dad, another from Melanie, a long message from my mother that I didn't listen to. I called Alicia. She'd already heard. "I told you it would be a disaster," she said. "How are you?" "I don't know yet." "Well, when you do, I'm here." I thanked her and hung up. The room was quiet. Daniel had stepped out for dinner, said he'd bring something back. I sat near the window and watched the city lights for a long time. The coffee would heal. The rest, I wasn't sure yet. But something had broken open, and there was no going back. The first week after the party moved slowly. I went back to work, but everything felt distant. I kept the blinds in my office half closed and let calls roll to voicemail when I could. My face was healing. There was still some redness on my cheek, but the worst of the pain had passed. The quiet hurt more than the sting ever did. I met with Jillian again that Friday. We sat across from each other in her warm, quiet office, a soft lamp glowing beside the window. I told her how I kept replaying the moment in my head, not just the coffee, but the silence before and after. "She's never done that before," I said. "At least, not like that." Jillian didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Not physically." But this didn't come out of nowhere. We talked through the years of comments, the way love always felt tied to usefulness, how success, no matter how hard-earned, was either ignored or treated like a threat. Jillian said, "There's a pattern here, Rachel, and it's been in place for a long time." I sat with that. Just let it settle. By Sunday, I felt ready to turn my phone back on for more than a few minutes at a time. The screen filled up immediately, missed calls, texts, voice messages. I scanned a few. One from Dad, two from Melanie, a string of short texts from Aunt Patricia, then one from a number I didn't recognize. It was Bradley. "Sounds like your family situation is complicated. If you're open to talking, I'd still love to explore some business opportunities." I deleted it without responding. Melanie showed up at my office the next day. No appointment, no warning, just appeared in the lobby demanding to see me. She was already arguing with the receptionist when I walked out to greet her. "Melanie, I said this isn't the place. I just need 5 minutes," she said, eyes wide. "Please." I led her to a conference room. She sat across from me, fidgeting with the strap on her purse. "Why didn't you tell you what? That you were successful, that you had money, that you paid off my loans?" I folded my hands on the table, because it wasn't about that. "You needed help, so I helped." Quietly. I didn't want it to change things. "But we're sisters," she said. "Sisters share things." We didn't share much, Melanie. Not when it mattered. She looked away, then back again. "I do care about you, you know. This isn't just about money." "Then why is it the first thing you brought up?" She didn't answer right away. I added, "Our mother threw coffee at my face, Melanie. At your engagement party. And nobody stopped her. She says it was an accident," she mumbled, "that she just lost control. Do you believe that?" She hesitated. "I don't know what to believe anymore." That at least sounded honest. "She's been crying a lot," Melanie added. "Yelling, too. One minute she wants to apologize, the next she says none of it was her fault. Dad doesn't know what to do." I stayed quiet. "Bradley's acting weird," she said next. "He barely talks to me unless it's about money. His parents aren't helping anymore. The wedding's, I don't know. I don't even know if it's happening. She looked up. What do I do? I didn't have an answer for her. Later that night, Dad called. His voice was slow and careful. I've been thinking a lot, he said, about what happened, about everything that came out. I'm not sure what to say, Dad. I should have stepped in, he said. I should have stopped it. There was a long pause. Your mother isn't handling this well. She's hurt, but I think it's more about being exposed, about being wrong. I didn't respond. I don't agree with what she did, he continued, and I'm sorry I stood by so long without saying anything. I let her take the lead in everything. I thought it was easier that way. It wasn't easier for me, I said. I know, he whispered. I see that now. I let the silence hold for a bit. Then I said, thanks for calling. The next few weeks were a mix of silence and noise. Some relatives reached out with polite concern. Some sent thinly veiled messages about forgiveness and keeping the family together. Aunt Patricia left a voicemail saying she'd love to meet about her son's new startup. I didn't answer any of them. Work, oddly enough, brought a kind of calm. Meetings had structure. Schedules didn't talk back. My clients didn't care about family drama. They wanted results, updates, clean spreadsheets, and good advice. Daniel's parents sent flowers and a handwritten card. His mother called to check in the day before my follow-up appointment. His father left me a message offering legal help if I wanted to take any action. Their voices sounded like sunlight. 3 weeks after the party, my mother came to my office building. She didn't make it past the lobby. Security called up, said a woman was downstairs causing a scene, refusing to leave unless I came down. I didn't. They escorted her out. The next day, a huge bouquet of lilies arrived. The note said, "Families fight, but love always finds its way back." I threw it away. On social media, Melanie's posts changed. The wedding update stopped. She started writing vague captions, things about trust, about finding out who really supports you. Bradley's name disappeared from her comments. Daniel and I went back to planning the wedding. We didn't change the date or the venue. The lighthouse on the coast still felt like the right place. We kept the guest list small. One night as we sat on the porch, he asked, "Do you want them there?" "My dad, maybe," I said. "But only if he comes alone. And your mom?" "I don't know," I said. "I don't think she'll come unless she gets to pretend like nothing happened." Daniel didn't answer. He just reached for my hand. "Whatever you decide," he said, "I'm with you." I looked at him, the soft light from the porch washing over his face, and for the first time in a long while I felt something steady beneath my feet. 3 days after the flowers arrived, I blocked my mother's number. It wasn't a decision I made all at once. I stared at her name for a while before I finally pressed the button. The calls hadn't stopped and the voicemails all sounded the same, each one a variation of, "Let's move forward," "Families fight," "Don't hold on to anger." I didn't feel angry. What I felt was tired. Daniel and I were sitting on the back porch later that evening. The air was just starting to cool, and the neighbor's dog barked now and then through the fence. I told him about the blocked number. He didn't say much, just nodded, and passed me the glass of iced tea he'd poured earlier. "You know you don't have to keep defending your choices," he said, "especially not to people who haven't earned that kind of access." I didn't respond, but the words stayed with me. That weekend I had lunch with Alicia. We picked a small place with outdoor seating, quiet, shaded just enough breeze to keep the heat from sitting on your skin too long. She asked how the guest list was coming. "I'm trying not to overthink it," I said. "We're keeping it small, no more than 50. "Your dad?" she asked. I nodded. "He's coming. Alone." She raised her eyebrows but didn't press. We talked for a while. Nothing heavy, just meals and wedding details, honeymoon ideas, the music list. Before we left, she handed me a little notepad. "I saw this and thought of you. Figured you could use it for vows or reminders or something." I flipped it open later that night. On the inside cover, she'd written, "Only pack what you want to carry forward." The following week, Melanie called from a new number. I let it go to voicemail. "I'm not calling about money, just hoping we can talk. I miss you, that's all." I didn't answer right away. It took me a few days. When I finally called back, she picked up on the first ring. "I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly. "I mean it. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Her voice was quieter than usual, less polished. "I didn't see it," she said. "How unfair things were. I thought Mom was just intense, but I'm starting to understand how deep it goes." I listened. "I ended things with Bradley," she added. "We were barely speaking. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be." There was a long pause. I didn't interrupt. "I got a job," she said next. "It's part-time, helping coordinate events at a local venue, but it's mine, and I'm showing up every day." "That's good, Melanie. I've got a little place now, studio apartment. It's not much, but I'm paying the rent myself." I could hear something new in her voice. Not pride exactly, but maybe ownership. "I'm not trying to fix everything overnight," she said. I want to be different, and I know that takes time." We talked a little more light surface level things. She asked about the wedding. I told her we were still moving forward as planned. She didn't ask to be added to the guest list. She just said, "I hope it's beautiful." 2 weeks later, she texted me a photo of her new business license. "Monroe Events, official as of this morning. I did it myself." I sent back a thumbs-up emoji and a simple, "proud of you." A few days after that, my dad and I met for coffee. We'd been seeing each other now and then, slowly trying to rebuild something. He looked older than I remembered. Not tired, just a little softer around the edges. "I want to be there," he said. "At your wedding. I want to support you." "You'll be welcome," I said, "as long as it's just you." He nodded. "Your mother doesn't understand. She thinks you're punishing her." "I'm not. I know. You're setting boundaries. She's never had to live with those before." He stirred his coffee for a while before he spoke again. "I let her take the lead for too long. I thought it was easier, kept things calm. But I see now that it came at a cost. Neither of us said much after that. We sat for a bit longer, then walked out to the parking lot together. He hugged me before we left. It wasn't long or emotional, just steady. "Thank you for still letting me be part of your life," he said. I nodded. "It's good to start again." That night, as I stood in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner, Daniel walked in with the mail. He handed me a small envelope with no return address. Inside was a card. Simple design. One line printed in gold foil. "Families are forever." No note, just a signature. My mother's name in cursive. I set the card on the counter and went back to cooking. The choice was made, and I wasn't going back. The morning of the wedding was quiet. The sun had just started rising above the horizon, casting pale gold across the Maine coastline. I stood in front of the window inside the lighthouse keeper's cottage, watching waves roll gently into the rocks below. The air smelled like salt and pine. The dress hung beside me, simple and lace-trimmed, just as I'd wanted. Alicia arrived with coffee in hand, already dressed in her sage-green bridesmaid gown. She walked in like she'd always belonged in that space. "You ready?" she asked, setting the cups down. I nodded. "I think so. Just feels strange. My dad's walking me down the aisle today." She paused before answering. "It's okay if that feels complicated. We talked about it plenty. In the last few months, Dad and I had been meeting for lunch almost every week. He asked questions now. He listened. And when I told him I needed certain boundaries if he wanted to be part of the wedding, he didn't argue. "She's your mother," he'd said gently during our final talk about the guest list. "I know," I said, "and I'm her daughter. But that doesn't mean I have to let her hurt me again." He'd nodded slowly. "I won't try to convince you anymore. I understand." He showed up to the rehearsal dinner alone. He didn't make excuses or mention her name. just smiled quietly when Daniel's parents greeted him like an old friend. Now, on the morning of the ceremony, he was waiting outside with the others. There was a soft knock at the cottage door. "It's Melanie," her voice called out. "Can I come in?" Alicia looked at me. I gave a small nod. Melanie stepped in slowly, holding a small box. Her dress matched Alicia's, but her posture was more cautious. "I brought you something," she said, opening the lid. Inside was a pearl bracelet, delicate, familiar. "Grandma Louise's," I said, brushing my fingers across it. "She always said you should have it," Melanie replied. "Mom doesn't know I brought it, but I think Grandma would have wanted you to wear it today." I fastened it around my wrist. "Thank you." We were quiet for a minute before she spoke again. "I've got news." I looked up. I got approved for the small business loan. I'm launching my own event planning company. "That's great, Melanie." She nodded. I wrote the business plan myself, submitted everything, didn't ask for help. Well, she gave a small smile, except for some advice from someone very good with numbers. I smiled back just enough. As Alicia stepped outside to check on timing, Melanie helped adjust my veil. "I've been thinking a lot about how we were raised," she said, "how money sat at the center of everything. You fought it one way, I leaned into it the other. Neither of us really got out clean." I didn't speak. "But I'm trying to unlearn some of it," she added. "Figure out what kind of person I want to be. I know that doesn't undo the past. I just hope it means something going forward." There was a knock. My dad's voice came through the door. "Time to line up." Melanie stepped back and smoothed the skirt of my dress one last time. "You look exactly how I always imagined you would today," she said. "Not in a fancy dress or anything. Just strong." I followed her out into the breeze where my father waited. He offered his arm. "Ready?" I took a breath. "Yes." The lighthouse lawn had been set up with white chairs, soft music, and a view of the ocean behind us. The sky had cleared to a bright blue. Daniel stood at the front, hands folded, smiling when he saw me. There were no side glances, no tight-lipped relatives whispering about drama. Just the people we'd chosen, people who showed up for the right reasons. The ceremony was short, just the way we wanted. A friend officiated. Alicia held my bouquet. Melanie stood beside her. When we exchanged vows, Daniel leaned in close and whispered, "You happy?" I nodded. "Very." After the ceremony, we moved to the reception tent set up along the bluff. String lights hung from the canopy, casting soft pools of light over each table. Dad gave a short speech, nothing elaborate, just a few words about watching his daughter build a life on her own terms. Later, I caught sight of Melanie talking with Daniel's cousin Michael. They were laughing about something at the dessert table. She looked light in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. As the night wound down, I stood at the edge of the lawn listening to the waves. Melanie joined me. "I need to tell you something," she said. I waited. "I've been talking to Mom," she said, "not about fixing anything, just trying to help her understand." I didn't speak. "She started therapy," she added, "last week. It's early. I'm not saying it changes anything. I just thought you'd want to know." I nodded once. "Thanks." Later, when most of the guests had gone, I found her sitting on the lighthouse steps, barefoot, heels in hand. I sat beside her. She looked out at the dark water. "I've been thinking about money again." I waited. "Not yours," she said quickly. "Just what it did to us, how Mom used it, how it shaped everything. You got strong because of it. I got dependent. Neither of us came out untouched. I didn't argue." She pulled a folded paper from her bag. "My first business budget," she said, holding it out. "Would you look at it? Not to fund anything. Just give me feedback." I took the paper. "Sure. Let's have lunch next week." She smiled. "I'd like that." We stood and walked back toward the tent where Daniel was waiting. The breeze off the water was cooler now. The sky stretched wide and dark above us. The evening wasn't just about marriage. It was about all the things we'd chosen to let go and all the things we were finally ready to carry forward. The Monday after the wedding, I met Melanie at a cafe 2 blocks from my office. She'd picked the place, small tables, real plates, and a chalkboard menu with daily specials. She was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window with a folder beside her coffee cup. When I sat down, she opened the folder and slid a few pages across the table. This is everything she said. Projected costs, marketing plan, the works. I figured you'd give honest feedback. I looked through it slowly. She'd done her homework. The numbers weren't perfect, but they were thoughtful. The business name was printed across the top in clean font Monroe Events. "Where'd you come up with the name?" I asked, looking up. She smiled. Felt right. I wanted something simple, something that felt like starting over. We spent nearly 2 hours going through her plan. She took notes, asked questions, stopped once to grab a napkin when her pen leaked. It reminded me of college study sessions, only this time the stakes were hers. When we finished, she packed up the folder and sat back. "I want to build something that's mine," she said. "Not Mom's version of a life. Not some idea I borrowed from someone else, just mine." "You're on your way," I said. She nodded and didn't say anything for a moment. Later that week, a letter came from my mother. Handwritten. No return address, just my name in careful cursive. I opened it at the kitchen table while Daniel made dinner. It wasn't long, 1.5 pages. There were no apologies, no ownership. Just a few paragraphs about family disappointment and what she felt had been taken from her. The last line read, "I hope one day you'll remember where you came from." I folded the letter, slid it into a drawer, and didn't take it out again. The weeks after the wedding passed quickly. Work picked up, and Daniel had back-to-back meetings with a new partner firm. We fell into a rhythm, early coffee, quiet dinners, weekend errands that felt more like calm than chores. My father called one Sunday morning. "Just wanted to say congratulations again," he said. "I've been thinking a lot about the wedding. It was peaceful, like a real beginning." I thanked him. "Your mother still thinks you'll change your mind," he added, voice low. "She doesn't get it. I'm not sure she wants to. I don't need her to," I said. He paused. "I'm trying to do better," he said finally. "Be a part of things, without trying to fix or smooth over. Just show up. That's enough," I told him, and I meant it. That afternoon, Daniel and I had lunch on the porch. He asked if I'd heard anything new from Melanie. I told him about the cafe meeting, about the business plan, about the way she seemed different now, more grounded, less like someone waiting for permission to move forward. He smiled. People change when they're ready, not a moment before. The next day, I had a voicemail from Aunt Patricia. Her tone had shifted, less condescending, more curious. "I didn't know half of what you were carrying. I suppose that's on me. If you ever feel like reconnecting, I'd love to hear how you're doing." I didn't call back, at least not right away. Instead, I spent that week focused on work, met with clients, helped one of my junior associates secure her first solo pitch. And on Friday, after the office closed, I walked home instead of taking a car. The air had turned cooler. Fall wasn't far off. That night, I got another text from Melanie. "Mom's still in therapy. She's not talking much, but she's going. I'm not sure where it'll lead. Just thought you'd want to know." I stared at the screen for a while before typing back, "Thanks for the update. Proud of you." Her reply came quickly. "You gave me something to aim toward, just by showing me it could be done." I sat with that for a moment. Sometimes healing didn't arrive with apologies. Sometimes it came in the shape of distance, new choices, and a life rebuilt with care. Melanie was building hers, and mine had already begun. A few weeks after Melanie's text, I found myself back at the lighthouse. Daniel had driven us up for the weekend. We weren't celebrating anything in particular, just needed the quiet. The wind was cooler now, and the waves below the bluff moved slower, like even the ocean had exhaled. We took a walk that morning past the spot where we'd exchanged vows. The white chairs were gone. The tent had long since come down. But I could still picture it, the way the sunlight hit the water, the look in Daniel's eyes when I said yes, the faces of the people who chose to show up with their full hearts. Later that evening, I sat alone on the front steps while Daniel called his parents. I watched the last of the light slip behind the trees and thought about how different things felt now. Not perfect, but settled and true. Melanie and I spoke regularly these days. Sometimes we talked about her new business, sometimes about nothing important. She never asked for money, never hinted. She'd send photos of event setups she was proud of. I'd offer quiet advice when she asked. It wasn't the relationship we'd had growing up. It was better, not because it had been repaired, but because it had been rebuilt. Slowly, with effort. My father called once a week now. He'd started volunteering at a local nonprofit that helped high school students with financial planning. Said it made him feel useful in a new way. He never mentioned my mother. Not once. And her I hadn't heard anything more since the last letter. Melanie said she was still attending therapy, but distant. Guarded. I didn't ask for updates. I didn't need them. Some relationships can be mended. Others remain behind, not out of anger, but because peace has to come from somewhere, and sometimes that means walking away. That was the hardest lesson. That justice doesn't always come with apologies or clean endings. Sometimes it comes in the form of space, of choosing peace over performance, truth over tradition. I used to think being the strong one meant carrying it all without complaint. Now I understand it's about knowing when to set something down for good. That night, as Daniel and I sat by the fire, he handed me a small notebook, one I'd started months ago during wedding planning. "You should write something," he said, about how it all turned out. I opened it to the last page and wrote, "Some stories don't need a perfect ending, just an honest one. To anyone listening right now, if you've had to draw a line with the people who raised you, if you've stood in a room full of family and felt like a stranger, I see you. You're not alone. And if you've ever chosen yourself, even when it was hard, even when no one understood, then you already know that's not selfishness. That's healing." Thank you for listening to my story. If it reminded you of something from your own life or helped you feel less alone, I hope you'll share it in the comments. And if you'd like to hear more stories about finding your way back to yourself, feel free to subscribe. Until next time, take good care of your peace. You've earned it.